The last order was pushing it too late again. My shift at the diner had ended hours ago, but with rent due next week and my bank account gasping for air, I'd picked up a couple of delivery gigs to stretch the night. The city never really slept, and neither did I, it seemed. By the time my phone buzzed with another request, it was past midnight. The app listed a pickup from a hole-in-the-wall noodle shop on the south side, one of those places that looked closed even when it wasn't. The streets were thinning out, the neon signs flickering over empty sidewalks. I didn't even check the drop-off details before hitting accept. Money was money. The restaurant was practically deserted when I got there. The owner, a silent man with tired eyes, handed me the paper bag without a word. It smelled rich. Garlic, soy, something. Spicy. My stomach growled, reminding me I hadn't eaten since noon. The address was a 20-minute drive away, deeper into the old industrial part of town. I'd made deliveries out there before. Warehouses, auto shops, storage units converted into makeshift offices. It wasn't exactly prime real estate, but businesses operated at all hours. As I neared the destination, the GPS directed me down a side street I didn't recognize. The buildings here were different, low, square structures, with cracked facades and faded signage. The kind of places that hadn't seen foot traffic in years. The road narrowed, lined with rusting fences and dumpsters overflowing with things nobody had bothered to collect. The pin landed on a building with no signage, just a corrugated metal door set into a concrete wall. No windows, no lights. It didn't look like any office I'd ever seen. My phone buzzed, a message from the customer. "You can just bring it inside." That was weird. Most people barely cracked their doors open, let alone invited delivery drivers in. I hesitated, then texted back, "Where should I leave it?" A few seconds later, "Inside. Just come in." I gripped the bag a little tighter. Maybe it was some kind of underground kitchen, a late-night staff meal. The door was unlocked, so I pushed it open. Dim light spilled from a row of old overhead bulbs, casting weak pools of yellow along a narrow hallway. The air was stale, thick with the smell of old concrete and something metallic, like rust. There was no reception desk, no waiting area, just a hallway stretching deeper into the building. I took a cautious step inside, peering down the corridor. "Hello?" No answer. Another step. Then another. Behind me, the door clicked shut. I spun around, heart hammering. The handle wouldn't turn. Locked. A cold wave rolled through me. I dropped the bag, fingers fumbling for my phone, but before I could type, I heard it. Footsteps. Not from behind me, from deeper inside the building. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. My pulse slammed against my ribs. I turned, scanning the hallway. There was another door ahead, slightly ajar. A chance. I bolted. Shoving the door open, I found myself in another hallway, this one lined with rooms. Doors cracked open just enough to show slivers of dark, empty spaces inside. The footsteps behind me quickened. I didn't wait. I ducked into the nearest room and pressed myself against the wall. A shape passed by the doorway. Tall, unhurried, pausing for just a second before continuing down the hall. I barely breathed. The moment it turned the corner, I moved. Quiet. Fast. Back the way I came, past the abandoned delivery bag, straight to the door. I didn't think. I rammed my shoulder against it. The door burst open, metal scraping concrete as I stumbled onto the street, lungs burning. I sprinted to my car, throwing myself inside and locking the doors in one motion. My hands were shaking as I turned the key. The engine roared to life. I didn't look back. I drove straight to the nearest gas station and called the cops. 20 minutes later, a patrol car arrived. The officers listened, took down my story, then drove to check it out. When they came back, they told me the building had been abandoned for years. No businesses, no records, no explanation for why someone had been inside. There were no cameras in the area, nothing to trace. The last order I ever delivered was still sitting there untouched. I never picked up another gig again. The invitation: I'd been working as a courier for nearly a year, mostly running errands for wealthy clients who didn't like dealing with people directly. It paid well enough and I didn't ask questions. That was the rule: deliver, leave, and don't linger. One evening, just before I was about to head home, my phone buzzed with a last-minute request. A man named Harlan needed a package delivered to an estate outside the city. The payout was double my usual rate. I hesitated. The address was in a place I didn't recognize, way beyond the suburbs, past where the roads were even named. But double the rate? Hard to ignore. I confirmed the job, picked up the package, a slim, unmarked box wrapped in thick brown paper, and followed the GPS through winding roads until I reached a narrow bridge. The trees on either side pressed close, forming a tunnel of tangled branches. My headlights barely cut through the dark. The road turned to gravel, then dirt. Just as I wondered if I'd made a mistake, I saw a gate ahead. It stood open, the rusted iron bars hanging loosely on their hinges. Beyond it, a house loomed at the end of a long driveway. Not a mansion, not exactly, but old. 3 stories tall, with pointed eaves and dark, shuttered windows. A single lantern flickered on the porch. I parked, leaving the engine running. I wasn't planning to stay long. Stepping out, I took the package and walked up the front steps. The wood groaned under my weight. I knocked once, twice. No answer. I checked my phone. No service. A gust of wind rattled the trees, and then my phone buzzed. A message from Harlan. Doors unlocked. Leave it inside the study. I stared at the screen. I never went inside. That was another rule. But something about the stillness of the place made it feel like no one was even here. Maybe the guy just didn't want to come to the door. Rich people were weird like that. The handle turned easily. The door swung open, revealing a grand hallway, lined with antique furniture and paintings whose subjects seemed to watch me as I stepped inside. The air smelled of old books and something faintly metallic. I spotted an open doorway ahead, a study just as the message had said. Inside, a massive desk sat in the center of the room, its surface cleared except for a single envelope. The fireplace was dead cold, the curtains drawn tight. I set the package down, turned to leave. A sound came from upstairs, a slow, deliberate creak. My breath hitched. I wasn't alone. I moved quickly back toward the door, but before I could reach it, another sound. This time, behind me, the scrape of a chair leg against wood. I spun around. The study was empty. The chair at the desk was exactly as it had been. But the envelope, it was gone. Something was wrong. My fingers fumbled for the door handle, but the moment I pulled it open, a shape lunged from the shadows. I collided with someone, hard. They grabbed at my jacket, yanking me back. I twisted, breaking free, and stumbled onto the porch. Footsteps pounded behind me. I ran down the steps across the gravel. My car was still running, its lights cutting through the dark. I reached it, threw myself inside, and slammed the door shut just as a figure burst from the house. Someone tall, broad-shouldered, their face hidden in the shadows. I didn't wait to see more. I jammed the car into reverse, tires skidding, and sped down the driveway. The open gate blurred past me, and I didn't slow down until I was miles away, back in the glow of streetlights and traffic. My phone finally regained signal. I checked my messages. The last one from Harlan had disappeared. No call history. No record of the job, like it had never happened. But I knew it had. The bruises on my arm proved it. And when I glanced at the passenger seat, my heart nearly stopped. The package. It was sitting there unopened. I hadn't brought it back, I hadn't even touched it. And yet, there it was, waiting. The ride that didn't feel right. I used to drive for extra cash. Nothing official, just picking people up and dropping them off for a few bucks. It wasn't a bad gig. I met all kinds of people, had some weird conversations, but mostly it was just easy money. One night, though, I got a request that didn't sit right with me. It was late, past 11. I was about to call it a night when the request popped up. The pickup was way out on the edge of town, way past where most people lived. I hesitated. A long drive for a single fare wasn't always worth it, but the guy had already prepaid a nice tip. It was too good to pass up. So I accepted. The drive started normally enough. I passed the usual spots, gas stations, a few 24-hour diners, a bunch of closed-up shops. But the farther I drove, the emptier it got. Fewer houses, fewer streetlights, just trees. A long stretch of road with nothing on either side. I kept glancing at the GPS. It told me I was almost there, but I wasn't seeing anything that looked like a house or a driveway, just trees and dirt. When I finally reached the location, I slowed down and checked my phone. There was nothing here. Just an empty road. I double-checked the app, but the pin dropped me in the middle of nowhere. No mailbox, no driveway, no sign of life. I rolled down my window hoping to hear something, maybe footsteps or a voice, but there was nothing. Just dead silence. I sighed and called the number listed in the app. The phone rang a few times before a guy answered. "You here?" His voice was weird, flat, kind of distant. "Yeah, but I don't see anything," I said. "Are you sure you put in the right address?" There was a pause. Then he said, "Yeah, you're in the right place." I frowned. "Okay, but I don't see a house or anything." "There's a path," he said. "Might be hard to see from the road, just pull in." "I'm waiting." I leaned out the window and squinted into the trees. A path? There was no road, no driveway, just thick woods. "I don't see it," I said. "It's there," he replied. "You might have to get out." Right as he said that, I saw something in the trees. A dim light, way back in the darkness. It wasn't bright, just a small flicker, like someone holding up a flashlight. But before I could get a good look, it went out. A chill ran down my spine. Are you flashing a light or something?" I asked. Silence. Then he chuckled, low and quiet. "Just come in." I hung up. Nope. I wasn't about to walk into the woods for some guy who refused to meet me at the road. That was a setup if I'd ever heard one. I canceled the ride and put my car in reverse. But right as I was about to back up, I saw something move. Not in the trees. Closer. A figure stepped out of the darkness, just barely caught in my headlights. They didn't wave, didn't call out, just stood there watching. I didn't stick around. I hit the gas and got the hell out of there. As I sped off, my phone buzzed. A notification from the app. Rider has canceled. I never went back to that area. Never took another late-night request to the middle of nowhere. And to this day, I still wonder if I had gotten out of my car that night, would I have ever made it back?